السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أحييكم على الهواء مباشرة من العاصمة البريطانية لندن، وأرحب بكم في حلقة جديدة من برنامج بلا حدود. تعيش بريطانيا ومعها أوروبا مرحلة انتظار وترقب وقلق لما سوف يسفر عنه الاستفتاء الذي سيجري في 23 من يونيو الجاري حول بقاء بريطانيا أو خروجها من الاتحاد الأوروبي، وسط جدل وانقسام كبير في المجتمع البريطاني ومخاوف أوروبية وعالمية. وحتى نفهم أبعاد هذا الاستفتاء الهام وهذه الخطوة وآثار الانسحاب أو البقاء البريطاني في الاتحاد الأوروبي وانعكاساته، سوف نقسم هذه الحلقة بين ضيفين. الأول هو اللورد ديفيد أوين، وزير الخارجية والصحة والبحرية البريطاني الأسبق وأحد أبرز الصقور المطالبين بخروج بريطانيا من الاتحاد الأوروبي. أما ضيفنا الثاني فسوف أعرفكم به بعد انتهاء فقرة اللورد ديفيد أوين. لورد ديفيد أوين، مرحبا بك. تحذيرات كثيرة أطلقها رئيس الحكومة البريطانية ديفيد كاميرون مخوفا البريطانيين من أن تصويتهم لصالح الخروج من الاتحاد الأوروبي يعني انهيار بريطانيا ويعني مزيدا من الغلاء في المعيشة بالنسبة لهم. لماذا تطالبون أنتم بالخروج من الاتحاد الأوروبي؟
Well, David Cameron gave people a choice. We don't have referendums very often in Britain. We had a referendum, as you know, in 1975, and we decided to stay in the European community. This referendum has turned out to be much more divisive, and the governments have been much more actively arguing against it. From my point of view, I think your watchers need to be reminded we joined a common market. It was a trading arrangement, an economic activity. We then became a European community, which was closer. We were beginning to talk about foreign affairs, wider agenda. And then we became a European Union. And at that time, we raised the whole question of a single currency. Now, I started to move into opposition to what was being presented, because I do not believe you can have a currency without a single country. And I think the flaw, and I would say the fatal flaw, started in 1992 with the Maastricht Treaty, and then when coins and euro notes in 2002, we hoped this experiment would work. By 2010, the euro was in crisis, and we're still in crisis, and many people are predicting a eurozone collapse. And so this thing, which was an experiment, is not working, and it's affecting the whole of the way the European Union handles its affairs. And I've come to the conclusion it is actually dysfunctional.
أنت نشرت مقالا في صحيفة صن البريطانية في 24 من فبراير الماضي، قلت فيه إن بقاء بريطانيا في الاتحاد الأوروبي يمثل خطرا على الأمن البريطاني. الآن توني بلير ومعه كثير من وزرائه المؤيدين للبقاء يقولون على العكس تماما، إن بقاء بريطانيا في الاتحاد الأوروبي هو الذي يمثل الضمان لأمنها واستقرارها.
Well, Tony Blair's record on security and our interests in the wider world, and particularly over Iraq and Afghanistan, has not been one on which, quite honestly, I'm very happy to have lectures about security. His record is not a good one, and I think that he is wrong on this, as he was wrong over both Iraq and Afghanistan. I don't think security is the main issue. I think it is economic, and the concern about the Eurozone. But if you take me to this field, I would say the fundamental aspect of British security ever since the end of the Second World War, when you saw the emergence of the Soviet Union, when President Truman delayed in 1946 pulling back American troops from Europe, and ever since, America has kept troops in Europe and we built in 1949 NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Our security, and at one time it was very risky, with the Soviet Union having missiles with nuclear warheads aimed at our cities, as with America and as with some other European countries. That security is dependent on NATO. And at this stage, I'm very worried by this pretension in Europe that we can build a European defense force. We need one defense arrangement in Europe, and that's NATO. And the European Union defense arrangements are an expensive diversion and actually quite a dangerous development because it impacts on how America makes their commitment to NATO, which is already beginning to weaken.
لكن تخويف كاميرون للبريطانيين وللعالم من خروج بريطانيا من الاتحاد الأوروبي وصل إلى درجة أن كاميرون يقول أن خروج بريطانيا من الاتحاد الأوروبي قد يؤدي إلى حرب عالمية ثالثة.
He shouldn't have called a referendum, if that's the question. If he really believes, I mean, you know, it is an absurdity, isn't it? If you really think there's going to be a third world war, why do you, as Prime Minister, come forward with the referendum, put it, first of all, announce it in 2013, then put it in your manifesto for the general election of 2015, and then actually legislate in the spring of this year? It's absurd. He's also called it by inference because he claims it's moral to stay. He's called it immoral to stay. You can't behave like that, like a prime minister. A prime minister has an overall responsibility to the nation. There's no need for this referendum. He was not forced to do it. He did it perhaps for the management reasons of his own party, which is split. In 1975, when Harold Wilson put this issue to the people of this country, there was none of this fear. There was none of this agenda of abuse. There was none of this saying, I've given you a referendum and now there's no choice. There is a choice, and there are rational choices. There are arguments for staying in, of course, I can see them. There are arguments for staying out. It's a balance of judgment because of the dysfunctional nature of the European Union that cannot change this. I mean, America has been urging them to change the fundamental flaws of the Eurozone. The German Bundesbank was very opposed when Chancellor Kohl produced this idea of creating a new currency. And they argued quite convincingly that if a currency is going to work, you have to have what we call fiscal transfers. You have to be able to move money around to deal with the inequalities across 19 nations. Now, the rich countries, Germany, the Netherlands, to name but two, are not prepared to put money into the Mediterranean countries. Look at Greece, 6 years in crisis. Look at Italy, in a very difficult financial situation. Germany is not prepared to support either Greece or Italy. And other countries had great difficulty in running through this. So we've had a build-up of resistance. This is not just in Britain, this backlash against what's happening in Europe. You're seeing it on the streets of Europe. You're seeing it in very right-wing extreme parties coming up. There is discontent. An opinion poll in Italy the other day said 48% wanted to leave the euro and return to the lira. So this is not a purely British problem. All of Europe is having difficulty with this idea that you can build one country in Europe. These countries have different cultures, they have different languages. We can cooperate, which is what the old model was. We can cooperate in a community. I was very happy within the European community. I had no problem with it at all. It was this pretension that you could build a United States of Europe in the same way as the United States of America. You might be able to do it over 100 years. You might slowly, very slowly be able to do it by consent. You can't do it by forcing it, and this present model is flawed, and it has to change.
إذن أنت تعترض على الاتحاد الأوروبي برمته. لماذا تعترض على الاتحاد الأوروبي برمته في نقاط محددة؟
Well, I believe in internationalism. I am a European. Therefore, I think you must learn first to cooperate with your neighbors, as you do in the Gulf, and I think it's a very good thing. And you do it by consent. You don't do it by qualified majority voting. You don't build up an independent government, if you like, in the sense of commission, which is not democratic, which people don't identify with. This country is one of the oldest democracies in the world. We suddenly now find in every aspect of our life, decisions being taken in Brussels by a commission, which is not answerable to us. We can't get rid of them. Here in this country, every general election, you can theoretically get rid of the government. You can kick them out. We don't have that. And we think that democracy does mean the alteration of power, holding your politicians accountable. If they cheat on you, you can retaliate by removing them from power. I've been twice kicked out of government. In 1970, when I was Minister of Health, and in 1979, when I was Foreign Secretary. It wasn't very comfortable. I don't say I agreed with it at the time, but pretty soon after, a few weeks, months, I understood why the electorate had kicked us out. I still stayed in Parliament, and you fought to come back. That's our system. And we are now being asked to give that up. We no longer make our own laws. We no longer take decisions which affect our country. We don't control our borders. If you're in a member state in any of the European Union, you can come to this country. You have an automatic right. We cannot prevent them from coming. Now, that's fine up to a certain point. But if you become very attractive, which Britain is, look at London now, it's one of the most populous cities to visit. If your population increases through immigration which you can't control, you build social tensions. Now, I'm in favour of a measure of immigration. I think it adds to our economic wealth. What we've not been good at is putting some of that wealth to soften some of the social tensions in some of our cities, where we're putting great strains on our hospitals, on our schools, and on our housing. And we're getting a backlash from public opinion. Now, politicians have to
كاميرون يقول كل هذا سينهار إذا خرجت بريطانيا من الاتحاد الأوروبي. كل هذا سينهار. ما المزايا التي سيحصل عليها البريطانيون إذا خرجوا من الاتحاد الأوروبي؟
Well, I don't take this economic disaster scenario that Cameron puts forward and the Treasury puts forward. I don't accept this. We, 10 years ago, exported 55% to Europe. We now export 45%. We've opened up markets in the world. Traditionally, Britain sold its goods across the whole world. We were and are a maritime nation. We're used to trading worldwide, and I think you'll find that we will push more of our trade. But the real issue is you've got to understand it. I mean, I'm sure you've watched Greece. I have a house in Greece. I've seen what has happened to the people there. Go into the pharmacies, empty shelves, see 50% unemployment. Go into the cities of Athens and elsewhere, young people with no prospects of a job at all. We've savaged their economy through austerity, and this is meant
لكن هل هذه أخطاء الحكومة اليونانية أم أخطاء الاتحاد الأوروبي؟
Both. I think that the Greek government should never have gone into the European Union. I think it was a great mistake that they ever went in. And their entry was rather unfortunate, with Goldman Sachs helping them to rig the figures. So the Greeks are not totally blameless in this. I don't believe that. But I do believe you have a social responsibility when something has happened like that. They're hit by crisis. You must try to be able to alleviate it and to help them. And that's what the world has taken on, these responsibilities. The IMF is used to dealing with countries that are effectively going bankrupt, and we should have helped them. We should have had debt alleviation, and we should have had less austerity and more understanding. Now, but forget for the moment Greece is a small country. If Italy was unable to compete, now Italy has lost huge percentage of competitiveness against Germany. In the past, Italy could devalue their currency. They can't do that. So it's hard for countries outside looking at this to realize how much they've given up. All of your countries in the Arab world have their own currency.
أنتم في بريطانيا لديكم عملتكم المستقلة، لم تدخلوا في العملة الموحدة ولم تدخلوا في الشنغن، لديكم مزايا كثيرة عن الأوروبيين. ما هي المكاسب التي سيخرج بها البريطانيون إذا خرجتم من الاتحاد الأوروبي؟
Well, you're quite right that we have our own currency, which we managed to maintain with an opt-out, and so does Denmark. But the real problem is that if you're in the European Union, if all the rules about your trade are made within the European Union, if more and more of the rules of the European Central Bank, which is dealing with their currency, start to impact on, say, the City of London and other things, you find that really quite essential economic choices, they now want to move into tax. They want to harmonize taxation, because they are aiming for a single country. That's what we have to understand. They want to build, many of these people, a Europe of one country. Now, fine, if they want to do that, and they can carry their own people with it. But the British never signed up for that, and they don't want it. And I think this is where we have got a natural division. If they want to go any further towards integration, which they do, and a European army, a European foreign policy, we have a whole raft of areas now which are far beyond what we entered into, which was a common market, and then a community of people trying to cooperate. Now, it need not be done with enmity or anger or frustration. We are neighbours, and we must retain what we are, which are European. We must retain a good neighbourly relationship. We will cooperate with the continental Europe as members of NATO, as members of the UN, as members of many different organisations. But the direction in which they want to go, of a United States of Europe, is not one which this country, the fifth largest economy in the world, a permanent member of the Security Council, with one of the most effective armed forces, spending about the fourth largest military in the world, we want to go on being able to be an independent country. I actually think that's in the interests of people who trade with us from the Gulf states, from people who've known us over many, many decades. You're used to us actually being able to make decisions ourselves, a British decision. No longer is that the case. You are now faced by European decisions. It may make it a bit easier in certain circumstances. I think you'll find, with Britain restored to being an independent, self-governing country, it will make a more balanced world, a better world, and a more prosperous one, and will actually be to your advantage as well as ours.
هل هذا التصويت سيكون فقط على خروج بريطانيا من الاتحاد الأوروبي، أم على مستقبل كاميرون وحزب المحافظين المنقسم نصفين؟ حتى الحكومة منقسمة بالنسبة للاستفتاء نصفين، ما بين مؤيدين للبقاء ومؤيدين للخروج.
Well, I'm not a conservative. I've never been conservative in my life, and I'm a little reluctant to talk about it. But the way we have a referendum is we choose the sense of direction. So we will, as a people, and I've only got one vote, we will decide either to leave or to remain. I hope we leave. And then it is for the government and Prime Minister Cameron, who said he will implement this choice, to deal with it. He'll have to swallow a lot of words of what he said over the last 4 or 5 weeks, but politicians are used to that. So let's hope that he will stay in office, as I think he should, and deliver what the people have chosen, even though it is not what he himself wants. And I think you'll find that Britain will rally together, accept the verdict of the decisions. Now, if I lose, I can't guarantee this we're going to win. I will accept the decision. I don't believe you can have referendums every 2 or 3 years. This is a lifetime choice, and you'll have to live with the result for the very least 10, 15, 20 years. I don't actually think there will be another referendum. That's why I think it's such an important choice. And for the British people is, do you want to remain British? Do you want a self-government? Are you prepared to pay some sacrifice for it? I think you'll be surprised how many British people are prepared to. That, in the end of the day, is the choice that they're facing. And all this fear tactics, all this absurd talk about Third World War and everything like that has almost been discounted. Even when heads of government come here, when President Obama, a man I like and respect, came here, our polls went
أوباما
up.
دخل في
Our
المسألة،
polls went up.
زعماء أوروبا دخلوا في المسألة، رؤساء البنوك الاقتصادية في العالم، الكل يخوف من خروج بريطانيا، وكأن العالم سينهار إذا خرجت بريطانيا من الاتحاد الأوروبي.
But you know it's rubbish. I mean, you've got a smile on your face when you put the question to me. You know they're exaggerating.
لورد أوين، أنت تقرأ مثل ما أنا قرأت، من أوباما إلى رؤساء الحكومات الأوروبية إلى رؤساء البنوك العالمية، إلى الكل يخوف ويرعب من خروج بريطانيا من الاتحاد الأوروبي، وأن النظام العالمي سينهار إذا صوت البريطانيون لصالح الخروج من الاتحاد الأوروبي.
All I can really say, well, if we do vote to go out, it will be a calculated decision. It will be a free and open democracy using a system of a referendum, which we're entitled to use, calculating the decisions. Frankly, I don't think David Cameron has done himself any good. If you look at his ratings, he's on 18%, whereas Boris Johnson is on 30%, a huge difference. I think we have got to put this to a side. He is elected as our Prime Minister. I personally hope he stays. I think he will leave British politics earlier than he thought he was going to, if this happens. But his duty, in my view, is to stay for the first few months of this transition. After all, we're doing a legitimate procedure. It's in the treaties. You can leave this organisation. And it's not going to be done overnight. For 2 years, there's going to be a transition period. It may be added to, if everybody can agree, by another year. So there's nothing illegitimate in this procedure. It can be done with friendship and with understanding. They will go to create a single European state, and we will remain British. And that's been a perfectly fair decision, and one which I do not think will harm the world economy. It'll have a little bit of difficulty explaining it, a little bit of difficulty of readjustment, but it's worth it for most British people, I think.
سؤالي الأخير، معظم استطلاعات الرأي الآن تقريبا متساوية ما بين ما الذين يريدون أو الذين يريدون البقاء أو الخروج. مستشار كاميرون يقولون إنهم يعملون على أن يكون مؤيدو البقاء في أوروبا 60% من الذين سيذهبون للتصويت. ما توقعاتك أنت لما سيسفر عنه التصويت الذي سيحدث في 23 يونيو؟
I think a week ago, the Remain campaign were very foolish to brief that the election was over, they'd won the argument, and they, on the basis of very few opinion polls. I'm not going to tell you I know the results of this election in 3 weeks' time. I honestly don't. I think it is going to be close, but I don't know the result. I don't take the British people for granted. They've had a habit of getting these things right. I'm now 77. I was born in 1938. In every single general election, I now believe they got it right. They had that great victory for the Attlee government in 1945, totally unpredicted. Margaret Thatcher came in. Many people, those were two great governments, one of the left and one of the right. Now the people themselves have a choice about what sort of government they want. And I think they want their own self-governing democracy, and they can decide what politicians make the decision, and if they don't like it, they will remove them at a general election. We're increasingly losing that power to a remote bureaucracy in Brussels, a parliament which people do not relate to, and most people don't even know who's there, a member of parliament. We are taking back our own country, if some way people describe it. We understand why a lot of young people want this idealistic vision of a United States of Europe. But it took a long time to create the United States of America. They had a civil war. It took a long, long time. You don't create a new country out of many different nations quickly. And Europe is showing that it can't manage even its single currency. And that is really the big thing at the moment. To stay in that economy is to risk very serious repercussions from a collapse of the euro, which will hurt us even though we're not in itself the Eurozone. We're in the European Union.
اللورد ديفيد أوين، لورد ديفيد أوين وزير الخارجية البريطاني الأسبق وأحد أبرز الصقور المؤيدين لخروج بريطانيا من الاتحاد الأوروبي. شكرا جزيلا لك. مشاهدينا الكرام، أرجو أن تبقوا معنا في الجزء الثاني من البرنامج. نتناول الوضع الاقتصادي لما سوف يسفر عنه تصويت البريطانيين بالخروج من الاتحاد الأوروبي أو البقاء مع الخبير الاقتصادي البارز كيث بويفيلد. ابقوا معنا، فاصل قصير ونعود إليكم لنستكمل هذا الحوار الهام حول الاستفتاء الذي سيجري في بريطانيا في 23 من يونيو القادم للبقاء أو الخروج من الاتحاد الأوروبي. ابقوا معنا. أهلا بكم من جديد. بلا حدود نحن معكم على الهواء مباشرة من العاصمة البريطانية لندن لنناقش الاستفتاء البريطاني الذي سيجري في 23 من يونيو القادم حول بقاء أو خروج بريطانيا من الاتحاد الأوروبي، والذي يثير مخاوف كثيرة داخل بريطانيا وخارجها. ضيفي في الجزء الثاني من البرنامج هو الخبير الاقتصادي البريطاني البارز كيث بويفيلد، الذي يحظى بسمعة دولية في مجال التنمية الاقتصادية العالمية، والذي أعد أكثر من 80 دراسة لكثير من المراكز البحثية المرموقة مثل مركز الدراسات السياسية ومعهد الشؤون الاقتصادية ومنتدى السياسات الأوروبي، وسوف يقدم لنا رؤية اقتصادية مستقلة عن السلبيات والإيجابيات لخروج أو بقاء بريطانيا في الاتحاد الأوروبي. وأود أن أنوه إلى أننا حاولنا الاتصال بحملة تأييد بقاء بريطانيا في الاتحاد الأوروبي لنطلب منهم أن يكون أحدهم ضيفنا ليوازي حضور اللورد أوين في الجزء الأول، لكنهم قالوا نحن نفضل أن نتعامل مع الإعلام المحلي للتأثير على الرأي العام وليس الحديث إلى الإعلام العالمي. أرحب بك في هذا البرنامج، شكرا جزيلا لك. سؤالي الأول لك حول أسباب الانقسام الحاد الموجود في المجتمع البريطاني حول البقاء وحول الخروج.
I think a lot of it is a vote about voting against the establishment. There is a view, particularly outside London, amongst older people, that what you've actually seen with the European Union, and as it's grown with the 28 member states, is the political elite of Brussels and also the political elite of this country really stamping their view of how they see a political project, the European Union, advancing. You have to remember that the European Union was very much a product of what happened in the Second World War and the aftermath. And what you've actually seen in the last few years is a move to have the whole of Europe operating along the lines of a sort of United States of Europe, with a centralised control over monetary policy and fiscal policy. And that is likely to increase over the next few years, particularly with what is known as the Five Presidents Report on the future of the euro currency area.
ما المزايا التي سيجنيها البريطانيون إذا بقوا في الاتحاد الأوروبي؟ وما هي المزايا التي سيجنوها إذا خرجوا؟
Right, in a nutshell, investors love certainty. So if we stay within the European Union, it's likely that that will be appreciated by investors. There will be no rapid devaluation of the sterling currency, which might well happen in the first few months if we actually elect to leave the European Union. So there's going to be greater certainty. There will be not so many worries about what happens with trade deals because the European Union negotiates on our behalf. And you're likely to continue to see direct foreign investment from car manufacturers such as Ford and BMW into the United Kingdom, and also the Japanese car manufacturers, although it's very significant that companies like Nissan, Honda and Toyota say that they will continue to invest in the United Kingdom. And this is a crucial point. The average tariff that the European Union levies on goods is only, on average, 2.3%. And that isn't actually all that great. It's higher where there are more sensitive sectors, for example, agriculture.
هل هناك مخاطر اقتصادية حقيقية على بريطانيا إذا خرجت من الاتحاد الأوروبي في ظل حملة التخويف الشديدة التي يقودها ديفيد كاميرون ومستشاروه والطرف المؤيد للخروج للبقاء؟
Well, there is a danger. There is a danger that what the Prime Minister is saying and our Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne, might create a crisis. I mean, it strikes me that it's rather disingenuous that here we had the Prime Minister and Mr Osborne saying earlier this year that they would only recommend a vote to remain in the European Union if they got the right deal. They're now telling us that all sorts of terrible things will happen if we decide to leave. It's rather disingenuous, it strikes me, that if it was such a threat to Britain, that they should have even had the referendum in the first place. But the crucial thing is that David Cameron was pressurised into having this election, or rather a referendum, because of his own political weakness in the Conservative Party and the pressures that were being posed by UKIP, which was eating into their core vote.
حينما تابعت تصريحات لا سيما بعض كبار المسؤولين في الاستثمارات الأجنبية مثل رئيس مايكروسوفت هنا في بريطانيا ديل بيل، كذلك كثير من المستثمرين العرب والأجانب قلقون من خروج بريطانيا أن هذا سيؤدي إلى انهيار الجنيه وإلى انهيار الاقتصاد البريطاني. كما يقول وزير الخزانة المنازل سيهبط سعرها إلى 18%. ديفيد كاميرون يقول للشعب البريطاني سيرتفع ثمن الغذاء والملابس بنسبة 20%. الناس خائفة جدا من خطوة الخروج من الاتحاد الأوروبي.
Yes, but I think those fears are exaggerated. After all, Sir Stuart Rose, who was the chief executive of Marks and Spencer's, who was actually campaigning to remain, said that for several years, whatever the vote, there's not going to be that much of an impact. So I think that what's been happening in the last couple of months is there's been a deliberate attempt to try and frighten people, particularly investors. Also, American investors have always tended to like the idea of a single European Union with Britain in it, not least because they think that the United Kingdom exerts an influence in favour of free markets, whereas there is a different model, for example, in France, which has all sorts of labour market rigidities, which have been reflected just in the last couple of weeks with what's been going on with the Communist Trade Union stopping petrol from getting to petrol stations in France. So there's a big, big issue there in terms of certainty. But I think that the fears over what would happen if Britain was to leave the European Union are very much exaggerated, but nobody actually knows until it happens.
صندوق النقد الدولي حذر من خروج بريطانيا من الاتحاد الأوروبي. البنك الدولي حذر من خروج بريطانيا. باراك أوباما حذر من خروج بريطانيا. مدير البنك المركزي الياباني في آخر الدنيا حذر من خروج بريطانيا. زعماء عالميون يحذرون من خروج بريطانيا من الاتحاد الأوروبي، وكأن خروج بريطانيا من الاتحاد الأوروبي سيؤدي إلى كارثة اقتصادية عالمية. أنت كخبير اقتصادي يسمع لك في كثير من المحافل، ما تفسيرك لهذا الأمر؟
I think that all these various organisations are very much personifications of that establishment club that I was talking about. I also think it was very significant that President Obama used the English word queue when it came to looking at where Britain was going to be in terms of being able to negotiate a trade agreement with the United States. Queue is not an American word. It's something that you find used in Britain. And I suspect that the speech given by President Obama was very much influenced by David Cameron and his political office at number 10, because it's not the sort of thing that a President of the United States would normally use.
هذا الاستفتاء دخل فيه أبو بكر البغدادي زعيم تنظيم الدولة، حيث قال ديفيد كاميرون إن خروج بريطانيا من الاتحاد الأوروبي سوف يسعد أبو بكر البغدادي وسوف يسعد الرئيس الروسي فلاديمير بوتين. كل مصائب الدنيا الآن توظف في بريطانيا من أجل هذا الاستفتاء.
I think there's an element of truth in that. I think that Mr. Putin will be very happy if Britain does decide to leave the European Union. But again, I think that those views are very much exaggerated. I think that it will be interesting to see the way in which Britain deploys its military force. For example, it's now opened up a naval base again in Bahrain, and you're likely to see the British taking a much more proactive role in places like the Gulf than has been seen hitherto. It's quite a major change in military strategy on the part of the British. And the Americans have been withdrawing from the Middle East and the Gulf. And who knows what sort of foreign policy you might see under Mr. Trump if he became President of the United States.
نحن الآن على مشارف تغيرات هائلة سوف تجري في الشرق الأوسط والمنطقة بناء على هذا التحليل الذي قلته.
I think that there's a real issue with the migration flows from the Middle East and the Maghreb into Europe. And I think that we're likely to see that continuing. It's going to be an issue for decades, not just years. And I think that the European Union are going to have tremendous problems trying to stop that flow of political asylum seekers and economic migrants from the Middle East into Europe, because it's a rational thing to do for a lot of people to try and come into Europe. And if they can't go in through previous routes, for example, from Turkey to Greece, there will be people traffickers who are going to explore new routes. You're already beginning to see it in the United Kingdom.
الطرف الآخر المؤيد لخروج بريطانيا من الاتحاد الأوروبي يستخدم هو الآخر تصريحات وعبارات قوية. عمدة لندن السابق بوريس جونسون الذي يقف على رأس المطالبين بخروج بريطانيا من الاتحاد الأوروبي وتقريبا يقسم حزب المحافظين إلى نصفين، يقول إن خروج بريطانيا من الاتحاد الأوروبي بمثابة خروجها من السجن، وسوف يزيح عبئا ثقيلا عن كتف الاقتصاد البريطاني. وزير العدل البريطاني والحكومة البريطانية منقسمة إلى نصفين، نصف يؤيد الخروج ونصف يؤيد البقاء. مايكل جوف قال في حديث لسانداي تايمز في 7 مارس الماضي إن الاتحاد الأوروبي يثير الإرهاب والفاشية. إلى هذا الحد الطرف الآخر يكره الاتحاد الأوروبي ويعتبره يثير الإرهاب والفاشية، أو أن بريطانيا في سجن كبير إذا بقيت في الاتحاد الأوروبي. ما قراءتك؟
Well, that's pure hyperbole. It's a great exaggeration. But I think what you've seen these last few weeks is that the Brexit camp reckon that their arguments in terms of the economics of whether we stay in the European Union or not have not been that compelling. And I think partly through the opinion polling that they've been doing and what we call focus groups, they've realised that particularly amongst swing voters, traditional working class voters who tended to vote Labour in the past, immigration and the fear of migration and the fear of terrorism is something that they've decided to ramp up. And I think we're likely to hear a lot more of that in the next few weeks, although it's not a view that is universally supported by people on the Brexit camp. But the whole tone of this debate is becoming more shrill with every day. And the political ramifications of that are going to be there for decades, rather like when the Conservative Party decided to get rid of Margaret Thatcher.
إذن التقرير الذي صدر عن الهيئة البرلمانية مشتركة في 27 مايو الماضي أن الطرفين يقومان بتضليل المجتمع البريطاني.
I think that's entirely correct. And I have a lot of time for the chairman of that Treasury Select Committee, Andrew Tyree. It was very interesting and very significant that members of that committee, who comprise all the political parties in Parliament, for example, Jacob Rees-Mogg, who is a very prominent campaigner in favour of Britain leaving the EU, accepted those points in that report and has been on television and radio saying, yes, a lot of the points that are being voiced by the Brexit camp don't really stack up. And I think that from the electorate's point of view, this is going to be a turn-off, and it will have a very, very crucial implication in terms of the actual Brexit vote on the 23rd of June. It all hinges on who bothers to go and vote on the day. And I have a feeling that the people who are inclined to vote to leave the European Union are more inclined to go and vote, partly because they're older people, and the young, whilst they might be attracted to the idea of remaining in the European Union, I'm not so sure, based on past evidence, whether they'll actually go and vote. And then there's the whole phenomena of the sort of black swan. What could happen if there was a terrorist outrage, for example, in the European Soccer Cup? And also, on the 20th of June, England is playing Slovakia in the European Cup. And if they lose, that might have an influence, crazily, on the election, on the referendum result. Harold Wilson, back in 1970, blamed the fact that Labour lost that election on the fact that England lost against West Germany in the World Cup semi-final just a few days before the election. It might sound rather odd, but these things do have an influence on who bothers to go and vote and what they feel emotionally about the thing. And it's a very important thing. I think your viewers should be reminded that the United Kingdom, they're an island race, and they don't really regard themselves as being European. They talk about Europe as being the continent. They, on the whole, don't tend to identify themselves as being European. And that's where they differ with the political project, which you see personified with people like the President of France, Monsieur Hollande, who is very, very committed to the whole idea of a united Europe. And that's you also see with Christine Lagarde, who is, after all, a French politician. And she's been bending over backwards to bolster the euro area.
إذن نحن أمام 3 أسابيع حاسمة في بريطانيا.
Yeah, and, you know, nobody really knows what the result's going to be. I think it was very significant that Professor John Curtis, who is a psephologist, an expert on voting behaviour, he gave a talk at Chatham House last week here in London, where he was saying that he thought it was on a knife edge, the actual result, and that it was going to be very, very close. And it all hinges, pivots on who bothers to go and vote on the day. It's going to be one of the most important voting days in the last 30 years here in the United Kingdom.
أنا عندي عشرات الأسئلة من المشاهدين، ولكن الوقت لا يتسع لها. لكن أريد أن نفهم شيئا في سؤالي الأخير. لماذا ينحاز كبار السن البريطانيين إلى الخروج من الاتحاد الأوروبي، بينما يسعى كاميرون إلى إقناع الشباب بأن يصوتوا لصالح البقاء؟
I think it's partly worries about the pressures on our welfare state there are going to be at least 3 million more people here in 2030. Already our National Health Service and our housing situation, particularly in London and the South East, is under tremendous stress. I think there is a fear, particularly amongst those working class voters who in the past have tended to vote Labour, that they're not going to have such a rosy future if you continue to see a stream of migrants coming into this country. Although economically speaking, you can say that that migration flow has been a tremendous boost for the UK economy. And also, in my experience, people coming to this country, particularly from Eastern Europe, they don't claim benefit. In fact, they don't have one job, they often have 2 or 3. And they're paying the taxes that look after those older people. So there's a curious irony there.
شكرا جزيلا كيث بويفيلد. شكرا جزيلا لك. كما أشكركم مشاهدينا الكرام على حسن متابعتكم. ترقبوا معنا ما سوف يحدث في بريطانيا في 23 من يونيو القادم، والذي سيحدد هل ستبقى بريطانيا في الاتحاد الأوروبي أم ستخرج منه، وماذا سيحدث بناء على تصويت الشعب البريطاني. في الختام أقول لكم تحياتي فريقي البرنامج من لندن والدوحة، وهذا أحمد منصور يحييكم بلا حدود من العاصمة البريطانية لندن، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.